Hey everybody, it's Ken Davenport. Welcome back to the Producer's Perspective Live. Tonight, the Tony-nominated Patrick Page of Hadestown, Spring Awakening, and Spider-Man, and a ton more. We are raising money for the Actors Fund. We're here every Tuesday night, so let's get to it.
We're getting the band back together, getting the boys who rock again. We're getting the band back together, rocking the face of the place that remembers when some punks from the suburbs lit the sky with too much reverb. We're getting the band back together.
Hey everybody, it's Ken Davenport. Welcome back. It's another Tuesday night in the middle of a pandemic. Actually, let's just hope we're past the middle by now and we are closing in. We're rounding a corner. I don't know. We're some way in this. Thanks for all of you for joining us tonight and throughout this whole thing. We will keep doing these until we stop. Welcome back. We do have Patrick Page with us tonight. We have a whole bunch of stuff, very exciting stuff to talk about with Patrick. Hello, Alan. Hello, Alan, there in the comments. Good to see you. Hello, everybody else that is watching. And hello, I keep forgetting to do this. Hello to all of you who are watching on replay. Many of you watch, well, you don't watch live. We do this thing live just for you, and frankly, you decide, I got better things to do. Seth Radesky is on. So you go watch him, and then you come back and watch us later. So greetings to you whenever and wherever you are watching. Hello, Amy Erickson. How are you? Hello, Michael. 2 silver foxes. Oh, okay. Whenever you're watching at 3 o'clock in the morning somewhere in Australia, hello and thank you. We do have 70-something episodes of this sucker, so go back and check it out. It's actually fun. I just went back and watched one of the first 2 episodes to hear me say things like, we'll probably be through this in like a month. So what show are you going to be doing in like 6 weeks from now? That didn't happen. Here we are. So go check that out if you want to get a little time capsule of the last 6 months. What else we got going on? And especially check out Brian Stokes Mitchell's episode from last week. It's quite an inspiration. I almost broke out into the impossible dream myself hearing him speak. So go check that out. It's an incredible episode. And frankly, I just sat there and just listened to the man. So go check that out. Speaking of our guest, we have announcing our lineup for September. Mary, throw up that cavalcade of stars right now. Look at that. Raul Esparza, Sonia Taya, Matthew Lopez, Will Swenson, and Leah Salonga. And I will just give you a little tease. I discovered that Leah is a gamer. That's right. We pre-recorded her episode. It won't be live. We pre-recorded it because she's like in an alternate universe, like 13 years ahead or something. I still can't figure out the time. We figured out she's a gamer. Right, so I'm trying to get her on Twitch with Jordan Fisher. If you watch that episode, it's going to be fantastic. They'll have a little battle off. So incredible lineup coming up in September. So make sure you set a reminder. Mary's going to tell you how to set a reminder. A reminder for all those episodes is the best way to know that we are going live. Second bit of news I want to tell you about is we announced very recently that there's going to be a Tony Awards this spring. What do we think of that? Throw some comments. Look at that Tony Award graphic. It looks like Mary prepped that like weeks ago. It's such a great graphic. She grabbed it like 5 seconds ago because I told her to, and she didn't have time. It's great. What do we think? Throw some comments up there. What do we think about the Tony Awards? I'm going to ask Patrick Page this so he can start thinking about it. What do we think about the Tony Awards this year? Some shows are going to get to participate. Did I say spring? I meant fall. I have no idea what season it is. We are going to have a Tony. It's going to be like a tiny Tony. The tiny Tonys are going to be this fall. Thank you very much, Benny, for catching my error. Okay, enough of me. Let's bring on our guest. I'm thrilled to have him here. I had the distinct pleasure of, frankly, just seeing him in a show. It is quite a pleasure to see him in any show. But then I had the honor of being able to work with him on the Deaf West revival of Spring Awakening, which he was incredible. How many of you saw that? And of course, I got to witness his performance in Hadestown. But I have since learned so much more about the man. He has his own acting studio. He also has his own podcast. He's an incredible mental health advocate for artists, especially now, which we want to talk about. So let's just bring him on to the show. Please welcome to the live stream, Mr. Patrick Page. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi, Ken.
It's that voice.
How are you?
I am, well, that's the big question, right?
Yes,
How
it
is
is a big
everybody?
question nowadays. It's not a casual question anymore, is it?
No, it's like the big $1 million question. It should be like a game show. Like, how are you in the pandemic? How are you?
Do you have a short answer, or is it a long answer?
You know, I have begun to be honest, and if anyone has spoken to me on the phone recently, so I basically have a set answer to this, and I change it like every 2 weeks, and I set the answer to try and keep things light for myself. And so this we'll try it again. Ask me again. This is the answer of the last week and a half. Go ahead.
How are you?
I'm living the pandemic dream, Patrick.
You are.
Living the pandemic dream.
Yeah, we kind of all wish it was a dream that we'd wake up from.
Yeah, it's like a strange movie, like Inception or something.
It's very strange, and if you're like me, you go through cycles where some days where you almost forget that we set this kind of pause button, and then in the middle of this pandemic, where our entire lives have been put on pause in terms of our professional lives, at least. In the middle of that, we also have this unbelievably extraordinary election that we're all just waiting to see what the world is going to be 70 days from now, you know? So we're in these kind of two different movies simultaneously, two different dystopian movies simultaneously.
Yeah, historians will look upon this as one of the most strange times in world history for sure. And the educational ramifications of this and keeping kids out of school in 10, 20 years, when we look back at what happened.
Now, on a much shallower note, I must note, I didn't know whether or not today's podcast was a visual or not a visual. Are they able to see us as I'm able to see you?
Yes, everyone can see us.
So I'm digging the Kevin Davenport hair now.
The corona.
You're listening to this, and rather than watching it, Ken has white hair like I had up until about 3 months ago. Now, in order for my hair to be as white as Ken's, I have to bleach it every 2.5 weeks. But it looks like yours maybe is just natural because of the pandemic.
This is just au natural. That's right.
You're gonna be able to raise so much money with that hair. That's producer hair.
What's funny is a couple people have returned my Zooms a little bit quicker than usual.
Right. I'm telling you, when I went with the white hair, I got a whole different level of respect.
Really?
Yeah.
So how are you doing through all this?
Just as I said, it's up and down. Some days I feel great. I work on a lot of things at once. I always have 4 or 5 projects going. So my brain is constantly worrying on one or another of the projects that I'm working on, which is great. But for someone who has depression like me, this can be a time that's a little bit challenging in terms of, since depression is bipolar. What I've noticed is that I cycle between highs and lows much more quickly than I would normally do. And so it's just a kind of trying to keep everything kind of steady and not I'll wake up someday and everything seems possible, and I want to spend every dime we've had on a new house or something. And then and the next day I'll wake up and think there's no hope, and I'll just stay in bed for 3 days. So that's the honest answer.
I think, first of all, thank you for your openness and your transparency about what you struggled with, and I want to talk about that because you're so open about it, and then you're such an advocate for it. And I think I read some incredible statistic recently that inspired a blog post I wrote last week about how such a high percentage of people are dealing with some issue right now concerning mental illness, and whether it's anxiety or depression or whatever it is. And because what you just described is what I feel too. I literally have gone to my wife one day and been like, you know what? Let's just buy some house somewhere on a resort and just cash in everything, just go there. And the next day I'm like, we got to make sure we get that CBS coupon, because I don't know when any of this is ever going to come back, and what are we going to do? And it's incredible, the highs and lows of this thing. And how one, do you deal with that? And any tips do you have for folks out there that are dealing with what I'm dealing with, and what so many of us are dealing with?
I don't really have any tips, because I think everyone's mental health is so personal and so unique. I have medications that I take, which I resisted taking for over 20 years. The reason I talk about it is because the medications saved my life, and I had resisted taking them for decades because I was convinced that I would no longer be able to act, that I wouldn't be able to feel things as deeply, that it would make me into some kind of emotional zombie, none of which was true. But what is true, of course, is that because the brain is such a complicated mechanism, and we know really so little about it, we know a lot, but we don't know but there's more that we don't know than that we do. And because it's so complicated, everybody's individual chemistry is different. So finding the right combination of antidepressant medications can be very tricky for people, and so they give up. They try something, as I tried with my first medication, took all my ambition and joie de vivre out of me. And so we had to change that prescription, and then I got really high for a while, and so another prescription was added to that. And slowly, if you work with your doctor, you find something that works and gives you a kind of equilibrium. So that's how I deal with it. And I guess the flag I try to carry for actors is the one to say, help is available, doctors are available, and medication works, and you don't need to be afraid of it.
And in the midst of this, you've started a Wellness Wednesdays. Is that correct? Where you?
Yeah. On Instagram, we have Wellness Wednesdays, and it's amazing because I think so many young people now struggle with depression and with anxiety, and there's a kind of stigma around the illnesses, and so the reason I started talking about them was to kind of help remove the stigma. It came out of a strange and very sad circumstance where I was doing Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, and one of the people who worked on Spider-Man, I won't use his name because I don't want to bring it further out with his family or anything, or cause any more distress, but a wonderful person who I saw almost every day. And at some point, some months later, I read in the newspaper that he had taken his life. And this was before I begun talking about depression at all. And then one day I was doing an interview with Patrick Healy for the New York Times, and he asked me at the end of the interview, as interviewers frequently do. It was a long interview. It was an hour and a half or something. And at the end of it, we were sitting in the balcony of the theater where Spider-Man took place, which was then called it's changed its name so many times. I think it's the Lyric now.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were sitting up there, and it really hit me because it was the theater in which I'd known this person. And so I said, well, yeah, there is something else you should know about me. And I live with depression. I've lived with it for a long time, and this is how I treat it. And the reason I did that was because I felt that if other depressive people knew that there were other depressive people in the building, well, then we could go up to each other and say, hey, are you okay? How are you feeling? Do you have a good doctor? Here's the name of my doctor. Are you afraid of medications? Here's the medications I take. They're not necessarily for you, but if you find the right doctor, I'm sure they can find medications that will be effective. So it was I just thought if maybe he had known that I suffered from the same illness, maybe he would have at least, asked a question before taking those extreme measures. So that was why I started talking about it.
Well, that takes a tremendous amount of courage, and you helped people, I am sure, without a doubt, and continue to do so as a result of you just being honest. So thank you for that. Tell me a little bit about where you were when the virus hit the fan, as I like to say. When this came down in March, when you first heard about this thing coming, and when you knew it was going to change your life and everyone's life around you, what were you doing?
You know, there's so much controversy about who knew what when and who should have done what when, politically and in terms of shutting the country down and all of that. On January 25th, I had an appointment with my doctor. It was a not an important appointment, just a checkup. But at that time, he had gotten a text from the CDC saying that the virus was now in the United States. And he said to me at that time, he said, go to the store, buy food for at least 2 weeks. Make sure you have a go bag in case you need to leave the city, in case the subways closed down, in case this, in case that. It was on January 25th that he knew this would happen. And it wasn't until almost 3 weeks later that we began to shut down. And I remember because of that, I went to the theater. I was doing a Hadestown at the time. And I told my partner, Amber Gray, I said, listen, if you have things in your dressing room that you need at home, you should take them home because there's a good chance that we're going to get a call one morning and that the theater's going to be locked and we're not going to be able to get back in. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. So I had taken the stuff that I love, because I have a lot of stuff that's really dear to me in my dressing room. So I had brought all that home and I was ready when the theater closed. And Paige and I had a plan to leave town and to go out to Paige's folks in Avalon, New Jersey, where they have a house on the shore, which they rent in the summers. But this was, of course, March. So it was available. They had a room available for us. And we went out there for the first several months of the pandemic.
Did you do a performance at Hadestown on March, 11th, right? You would have done a performance?
Yeah, we did.
Do you remember what it was like being on stage that night? Because it certainly was big news that this thing was circulating around. Was it a topic of conversation? Did you feel anything different?
I don't think it was too much. I mean, I had told a few people to be very careful because in my particular building on the Upper West Side, we had one of the first cases in the country. The very first cases came out of, I think, a bar mitzvah in Rochester. I can't remember exactly.
Right.
But one of the people who had been at that event lives in our building. So they had been quarantined by the CDC. The entire family had been quarantined and it was locked down. And indeed, you didn't walk on that floor. There are two entrances to our building, one out the back and one out the front. And we chose to use the other one. So I had told people, this is real, this is happening, this is in my building.
Oh my
so
God.
We were all kind of using hand sanitizer more than usual. But other than that, I don't think there was a lot of alarm yet.
And what do you think it's going to look like on the other side of this? So when we come out of this and the audiences hopefully come back, how do you think the theater going public is going to change? Are they going to run back, do you think, to the theaters? Or are they going to be jumping up and down to get in there? Is it going to be a slow approach? I
think it'll be slow growth. I think obviously there'll be less travel. There'll be fewer tourists. So that will affect shows that are in long runs, shows like Phantom of the Opera and Lion King and so on. I think will be most affected by the lack of tourists. Shows that are just opening, that depend more on a New York audience. I think Hadestown, knock wood, may be in a little bit of a sweet spot in that it hadn't yet completely gone through the New York and the kind of the tri-state area. There were still a lot of people who wanted to get in, and yet it does appeal to tourists as well, and it's extraordinarily popular overseas. So, and also, of course, we're in a smaller house. Our producers had made the choice to put us in a 900-seat house instead of a 2,000-seat house. So all of that, I think, helps. Although now that I'm saying that out loud, with a 900-seat house, let's say you're only allowed to use every 3 seats, that means you've only got 300 seats. Whereas if you've got 2,000 seats, you're able to fill more of them. So I don't know which is the better situation.
Would you, as an actor, prefer to come back earlier with social distancing in place? So exactly as you just said, I'm going to come back in March and it's going to be every 3rd seat, or I'm going to come back in May and we won't have social distancing.
Well, I think if it were really a question of only a few months, March to May, then I might prefer just to wait. But I'm not confident that that will be the case. And everything I hear about a vaccine is that it may take a couple of applications of the vaccine, that there's going to be, it's not going to be able to get to everyone. It's going to go to, to the essential workers first. And so I just have no idea. What I do know is that our business will be permanently changed after this virus. I mean, I really have to congratulate you. A lot of the things that you've been attracted to as a producer, the thing that I've admired about them is they are things that can only exist in the theater. They would be nonsensical as a movie. So the Deaf West Spring Awakening is so evocative as a piece of theater, but it needs to be in a theater. You're choosing where to look. The audience is choosing whether to look. It's what Julie Taymor called in The Lion King a double event. So what she meant was that as you're looking at the mask of Scar, I played Scar in The Lion King, the mask sits above the actor's head. And you and the audience make the choice of whether you're looking at the eyes of the Scar mask or the eyes of Patrick Page. And you can go back and forth and you can have a double event. That makes it uniquely theatrical. It cannot exist in another form. Julie Taymor's Lion King would be absurd as a film. Similarly, the Michael Arden's Spring Awakening has that double event where you're looking at the non-hearing actor and you're looking at the hearing actor. You're looking at the signing actor and you're looking at the speaking actor. And you as an audience member are in control of that event. No one's telling you where to look. There is no close-up. So it's a uniquely theatrical experience in the same way that Michael's Once on This Island was immersive, using all of the elements, earth, air, fire, real earth, real dirt, real fire, real water, a real goat. These are things that it's like a petting zoo, right? There's no point in watching a petting zoo on television. So I think Michael is an artist, and now he's doing this with his drive-in work. Michael is an artist who's really thinking about, why is theater theater? How is it necessary? And the bottom line question for that I think this virus forces us to ask ourselves once again is, why do we have to gather in a room to do this? Why can't we do this in some other way? Why can't we do it through Zoom? Why can't we do it in a film? Why can't I stream it on Netflix? There has to be some necessity of why it must be gathered in a room full of people, and that necessity has to be something other than, well, because it's fun to gather in a room full of people, right? Because people have way too many options. There has to be a specific reason why this has to be performed live.
That you're so right. I say this a lot to emerging writers as well. Like if the idea can be done as a movie or as a book even, or as something else, do it that way. It's just easier. Your return may be better. Yeah. There has to be a reason that it exists on a stage. Yeah. And when you find it, like Michael is so good at finding those things, there's just nothing better. There's just nothing better. But you can tell when someone just throws something up just because, oh, well, I'm in the theater, so I did it in the theater. No, do it somewhere else.
Right. I think that people will be, in general, for some time, less inclined to gather. And so that's a challenge to us to say, Well, why must you gather? What's so special about this that you have to come out of your home where you have a virtually unlimited amount of exceptional entertainment, right? I can turn to my television right now and I can go through Netflix, Prime, HBO, Showtime, and the best writers in the world and the best actors in the world are working there. So I can do that now. And I can do that relatively inexpensively. So we've got to come up. We've got to really think about why you have to pay $150 and come out of your safe little home and maybe be uncomfortable, maybe wear a mask, get on the subway, risk getting sick. We've got to figure out why it's so special that you've got to come into our darkened room and as they say, let us entertain you.
Tell me a little bit about that process that you go through when you sign on to do a show. You've done such a wide variety of roles, and I can hear a little bit of it. Because I remember thinking, Michael telling me like, Patrick Page is going to do our Spring Awakening, and I was like, you're kidding me. And I remember I was like, we are very fortunate to get. What were you thinking? Like, what made you go this? I want to do this. Hadestown, this. Spider-Man, this. Caesar, this.
For me, if I have a number of alternatives to choose from, I will choose the one that I think I would have been proudest to be involved with. So in Spring Awakening, I already had a connection in my heart to the deaf community because my father was fluent in ASL, and the woman who he lived with for 4 years when he was at the University of Portland was deaf, and he had learned to be fluent in sign language. So I knew a little bit and I knew the culture well, but I didn't know nearly enough. So it was an opportunity for me to learn. And I wanted to be in a room with Michael as a director, which he far exceeded my expectations. I thought he would be good because I had worked with him as an actor. We had worked together on the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and the characters we played are almost always together. So I'd done a lot of work with him as an actor and really admired him as an actor. And so I wanted to work with him as a director, but he far exceeded my expectations. I think he's one of the best directors working today. I really do.
I totally agree. I have said to him directly, whatever you want to produce, I will do it. I don't care what it is. You don't even have to tell me. I will do it because I so trust his vision and on leading us into the next era of theater making, whatever that's going to be, especially now.
Yeah, he's got a very, very special sensibility.
What is the first thing you do when you start to prepare for a role that you're going to take on? The very first thing.
First thing is I just keep reading the play, because every time you read it, something else appears, right? The first time you read a play, if you're an actor like me, all you're looking at is your own role. You see what's the role? Is it any good? Do I want to do it? How many lines does it have? Is there a better role in the play that I would rather play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That's the first thing. You get that out of the way. Then you read the play again and you try to understand what the appeal of the play is. How does it hook you? You read the play again and different images appear. You read the play again and you realize maybe that there's an allegory in the play that you hadn't seen before, that it's really perhaps an allegory of, let's say, capitalism in Hadestown. There's a strong allegory going on that maybe you didn't recognize the first time, and you just keep reading it. And when I'm working on a play, I read the play usually once a day. And for me, that's how it reveals itself to me. So sometimes it's a peculiar process because, for example, when I was doing St. Joan on Broadway a couple of years ago, the character I played, the Inquisitor, has this extraordinary kind of 25-minute speech in the third act, I think it is, but he's not in the rest of the play. So I'm reading the rest of the play every day, which then lets me know slowly over time, I kind of absorb what my place is in the full scheme of the play, so that I can serve that. Like, how do I fit in the full scheme of the play? What would happen to this play if my character wasn't in it or was lessened in some way? Why is Shaw given this extraordinary turn to this character in the third act? Why do I have to be there? So that's the first thing, is just reading it all the time, and then beginning to ask just the fundamental questions of myself about my character. So the first question is going to be, what do I want? Who do I want it from? And what's in my way? And from there, I just start working.
You have an acting studio as well. When did this begin for you?
We started about 4 years ago. A dear friend of mine named Michael Liddig, who had been a student of mine, I used to teach privately. I coach privately for auditions and things. And then I had also been teaching in the NYU graduate program when Zelda Fischhandler ran it. And Michael was of a mind that I needed to have a studio where I would teach on a more regular basis. And I just was like, you know what, Michael, if I just can't do all the work that's involved with that. I can't put out the ads. I can't sign up for the rooms. I can't collect the money. It's just, I just can't. And I said, if you do all of that, I will show up and teach. And he said, I will do all of that. And so it's really, he's my co-founder, and we've taught ever since. And we have something over 150 students now. And I'm not able to teach acting over Zoom, because for me, teaching acting is so dependent on being in the room with the people, speaking of being in the room, to see whether the one actor is truly responsive to the other actor, or whether or not they're creating something out of nothing, or perhaps serving something up that they've imagined beforehand, as opposed to being in that moment with that other actor. So I'm not able to teach acting online, but what I am able to teach online is script analysis and acting theory. So I now have a class in which we're taking King Lear as a play, and I have 20 of my studio students that will then go through the entire play for a period of 3 months and unpack the entire play, all elements of it. And then also people can come if they'd like. If anybody who's listening wants to come to that, we meet on Tuesday nights. And although they wouldn't participate in the reading of the play, you can come and audit the and just listen in if you like. So those, in order to do that, you just contact the Patrick Page Studio online, and Michael will get back to you.
For free. They can just watch for free.
No, it's not free. I try to make everything affordable, but not free. I tried doing free for a while with various things, and I may have found what you've found as a producer with comps. Whenever I would give my comps out, I'd get a call at the last minute from the person saying, "I'm sorry, I can't use the comps tonight." When I was doing a free class, my attendance was pathetic. Yeah. People have to attach a value to something. So to audit the class is $20 per class.
Oh my gosh, that is the biggest bargain. I think I'm going. So I'll see you there, because I want to hear you unpack King Lear, for God's sakes. That's the most phenomenal thing. I love that you open it up like that, Todd. And you're so right about attaching a value. It's one of the reasons why college is so expensive.
Yeah.
Like, college is a big racket, let's face it. But when you end up paying that kind of money, your butt is going to go for the most part, because you have made that investment in yourself. And you're going to get something out of it.
It's part of the event of a Broadway show now too, and that's, lamentable in some ways that it has to be so expensive. But the other side of that, I used to think this. I used to say to some of the younger people in The Lion King, I did over 1,200 performances as Scar. And every night I would remind myself and remind the others, somebody out there, a family of 4, just on tickets, they've spent $600. Now they go to dinner. They spend another $200. That's $800. Now they've got parking. That's another $50-$100. I mean, this is $1,000 trip or more for a family of four. So we better be as if, Ben Brantley's sitting in the audience, because it's way too expensive to let our guard down at any time in terms of what we owe to that audience.
Is there a most common note or instruction you give to actors when you're like a young actor, you're meeting them, like, oh, they're doing this thing? Like when I read scripts, for example, there's usually like, the protagonist doesn't want anything, or the inciting incident doesn't happen fast enough. Is there a common note for actors coming up that you find you give more often than others?
I always ask them what the character wants in the scene. I always ask them, who do they want it from specifically, and make them have that personalize that in their lives, and what's in their way, why they're not getting it. So I would always ask a young actor those questions if I was beginning to work on any piece. Those are the fundamental questions, because that's what we do on stage. We perform a series of actions in service of trying to get something that we don't have that we want. That's what acting is. And then the other, if they've identified that and they've done their work and they now know what it is they are doing, in other words, they know I'm playing this action and that action and this action and that action, then usually my main note is simplify. Simplify. Do exactly the same thing. Simplify, which doesn't mean do it less. It doesn't mean do it smaller necessarily, although it may correspond with that. It means exactly that. Simplify. Take off the edges. The part that's decorative, take that away. Simplify. Just do the thing. Just do it.
I so see that in your performances too. If that's what's so fantastic about them, they seem so simple. You have that gift that makes other people go like, it's easy. Look at it. It's so easy up there, because you make it look so easy, which I find what great masters of the craft, of any craft, do. What does Patrick Page want to play? That famous cliche question? What's out there that you haven't done yet that you want to do?
Well, there's one that I have done that I want to do again. Rajiv Joseph wrote an extraordinary play called Archduke, about it's a black comedy along the lines, I think, of Dr. Strangelove or something like that, about the assassination that started World War I and the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. And he wrote in that play, which we did at the Mark Taper Forum, I think the most astonishing contemporary role for an actor that I have read since like Roy Cohn in Angels in America. And I played it in LA, and I'd like to play it again in New York. So that's one I'd like to do. There are any of the Shakespeare roles that I haven't done, I'd like to do, and there are many that I've done that I would like to do again. There's a great number of those. I'd say probably a dozen of those that I'd like to do.
Any good guys?
Any what? Good guys? Oh yeah, a lot of good guys. It's funny because I like playing good guys, and it's just one of those things, that I guess part of it is the way I look or the way I sound. You can't get away from that. I remember I was doing Cyrano de Bergerac at the Roundabout, and Douglas Hodge was playing Cyrano, and I was playing the so-called villain, de Guiche. And I was convinced that the way to play de Guiche was to play that he was completely, passionately, and truly in love with Roxanne, in the way that Cyrano and Christian were in love with Roxanne, that she wasn't a kind of a trophy for him, but that he was deeply in love with her. And so we were rehearsing it, and the director's a wonderful British director named Jamie Lloyd, and I think he was afraid that there might not be the counterpoise, the villain energy that you needed from De Guiche if I was to play him so in love with Roxanne like that. And I said to Jamie at the time, look, it's still me. It's still my cheekbones. It's still my voice. I'm never going to come across like, Ron Howard. You're still going to get your villain. But if I play it gently, it'll be much creepier, which he eventually agreed with me. But no, I would love to play. Let's see, who's it? Well, Harold Bloom said that Falstaff was the only. No, I'm sorry. I wrongly attribute this quote. Orson Welles said that Falstaff was the only truly good man that Shakespeare ever wrote. So I'll say that Falstaff will be my good man I'd like to play.
This variety of roles that you play, and it's all the same approach and the same research and the same prep for them, despite the difference. One of Shakespeare versus something Barahib, like it's the same?
It is the same. It's just that sometimes research is going to be different depending on who you're playing, right? So it's very, very helpful for me if there is no backstory for the character, for me to build a very detailed backstory. Sometimes that's easier than not, right? If you're playing a historical character, if you're playing Henry VIII, there's a lot of backstory there. So I was playing Henry VIII in Man for All Seasons opposite Langella. There's a huge amount of backstory and stuff that you can use. On the other hand, if you're playing Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast, which I did for 1,200 performances, there's not that backstory, right? You have to build it. And so that's part of the fun. So it's different. It's a little bit different in the sense that, like, depending how much fantasy you use, I always steal from everybody, So I'll steal parts of people's biographies from my characters, or I'll even steal from another character I've played. If I've played one character and I think, oh, this idea that I had that was very motivating in terms of their biography, that would really be useful here, then I'll just steal it from another character and I'll use it again.
What did you steal for Hadestown? How did you build that character?
The important thing in Hadestown, again, this goes to the central question: what does the character want? What does the character want most in the world of the play? So one could go down, and I did for a while in a rehearsal at New York Theater Workshop, the wrong road, and say what Hades wants is power. He wants to absolutely dominate everything in Hadestown, including his wife and including Persephone and including Eurydice. I'm sorry, his wife is Persephone, including Eurydice and including Orpheus and so on. And that would be the wrong road. That would be the wrong. Stanislavski called that the super objective of the character, what the character wants most in the world of the play. Now, that for me was the wrong road with Hades. The right road for me with Hades turned out to be what I want most in the world is to get the love of my wife back. I want to feel her love again. I want her to fall in love with me. I want to be in love with her. I want our conflict to be over. I want her back. I want her. That's what I want. And then everything else in the play comes from that. So that every scene, every line attaches to that. So if you were to see the play, let's say knowing that, you might see moments where I appear to be, let's say my line is to Orpheus, but I'm really looking over at Amber at that moment because the real target of the line is Amber. I want Amber to see that I'm dominating Reeve because I think mistakenly as Hades that will impress her. Of course, it does nothing but push her away, and it takes eventually Orpheus to teach me the right way to win her love.
I can very clearly see why Michael was like, yeah, you just teach. I'll handle everything. Don't worry about it. This has been an unbelievable lesson in what you do. So thank you for that. And thank you for your honesty about what you've dealt with and what you're dealing with, and also the tips on how we can get through this together, and that we will be back, I assume.
Yeah, we will be, and I can't wait. I mean, I'm chomping at the bit. I said to someone the other day, I said, it felt it was a little bit hurtful when the very first thing to close was the theaters. The very, very, very first thing to close down. And slowly other things closed down. And the only thing that was left was the essential workers. And what we could take away from that is that what we do is the least essential thing. But in fact, if you think about it, everybody is feeling this incredible longing right now to gather, to be together, even just to see a movie together, to go to a play together, to go to a bar, anything, to be together, to go and tell stories together. And that longing tells you that we are essential workers, right? The longing, just as if you didn't drink any water for 24 hours, you'd be thirsty. We have a longing to get back in the theater. I have a longing to get back into the audience of a theater.
I'm right there with you.
On the stage.
I'm going to post this later on Instagram. I walked by a Broadway theater today, and the door was cracked open, and I took a picture of it. I saw an aisle and seats, and I just literally leaned in like I just want to sit in one of those seats right now. We will. And if we're lucky, we'll be seeing you on that stage. So.
Yes. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us tonight.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Patrick Page, everybody. I mean, I'm auditing that class. I will see you all there auditing that class, because there's the website. Go check that out. And if you haven't seen Hadestown, when Hadestown returns, make sure you check it out. It is a performance of a lifetime, just like all of his performances. So that was Patrick Page. Next week, who do we have? We have another leading man, Raul Esparza, is next week. Just one next week. These are all the September guests. Just one, just the guy on the left. Raul Esparza. I can't wait to chat with him, because I fell in love with him just like so many did, seeing him in Tick, Tick, Boom at the James Street Theater downtown. What a performance that was. There's a moment I'm going to tell him all about it next week, and you'll just have to listen, because you'll be stuck with it. But it is one of those moments that Patrick just talked about, that what his objective was, not the super one, and this simple moment that just squeezed my heart. That's right, Raul Esparza squeezed my heart. You will hear about that next week. What else do we have to tell you? Oh, let's go out like we always do with something to make you smile. Here's a fantastic one. I'm Not Afraid of Anything. This is the Jason Robert Brown tune from Songs from a New World, which, by the way, I saw in Cabaret, when it was two people and Jason was one of them. Songs for a New World, Jason Robert Brown's I'm Not Afraid of Anything, sung by Nick T. Daly. So here's the interesting thing about Nick T. Daly. Nick T. Daly is up to win a contest. Playbill is sponsoring a Next Musical Theater Star contest, and Nick is one of the 10 finalists. I believe he's one of the 10 finalists, although Mary's giving me a very strange look right now. No, I'm right. It's one of the 10 finalists. So here's the thing. Mary said, here's what I want to do tonight for something to make you smile. I want the Nick T. Daly. And I said, okay, he's a finalist. Is there any reason why we're promoting him as opposed to the other 9? She was just like, I like him. I really like him. So tonight we are watching I'm Not Afraid of Anything by Nick T. Daly, solely because it makes Mary smile. And we got to give her something every once in a while. So we're going to play it right from here. So remember, do not move. I'm going to sign off. You're going to see my little 2-year-old who's already 4 feet taller than the little picture you're about to see, because it's been that long since we shot it. You're just hold on, and then we're going to go right into that, and then make sure you come back next week for Raul Esparza. Special shout out to all you folks, including my buddy Brian Smith, for throwing some stars at us. Remember, we are here for the Actors Fund. So please do what you can, because as Brian Stokes Mitchell told us last week, a lot of folks need some help. Okay, here's something that makes Mary smile.
Hi, my name is Nick Daly, and today I'll be singing I'm Not Afraid of Anything from Songs for a New World. And I feel the calling of adventure, and I hear the ringing in my ear. The lights are glaring, trumpets blaring, I'm right here. And I hear the calling of tomorrow, and I feel the stirring in my bones. And David loves me, he's afraid to hold me. Listen to the calling of excitement, can you feel the pounding of my heart? The lights are ready, pulse is steady, I can start. Never stop the calling of a challenge, blessing on the water and the stones. And David loves me, he's afraid to tell me. David loves me, he's afraid to trust me.